with Renee. All right, special live stream for the patrons. Welcome everybody. Jared Ball, Renee Johnston, Geechee Yaw, Mtume Gant, Samantha Youssef is back. We're also expecting Jared Ware from Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. So first of all, big salute to all of the patrons of Black Liberation Media. Thank you all very much for your support. And when others see this later on, please consider joining them so you could be invited to these special live and other programming that you get here. So good people, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all.
Peace, peace.
Peace. What up, everybody?
Hey.
What's going on? Listen, so when you sent that text last night, I had actually just walked in the house because, as everyone knows, I was on a round trip journey yesterday to Virginia and back. Shout out to my husband's team that won yesterday.
Congratulations.
But, so it was a long ride. Special shout out to Samantha, who kept me company literally for like 2 hours on the phone, which helped me to stay awake. But the last like 12 minutes were a struggle. And I get to the house and I'm tired and I take a quick shower and then I go in the room with the phone. I look at the phone. I'm like, what? He's up at midnight? What is going on? But I will take brotherly love at any time. So this works for me. It's all good. And it's appreciated. I appreciate y'all. Hopefully J-Dub's okay. Geechee, happy early birthday.
Happy birthday, Geechee.
Right on. Happy early birthday.
So Geechee is here despite, his birthday being tomorrow and him wanting to take the weekend off. I had to remind him on Friday that he had a previously scheduled appointment today.
First of all, this is a gift. So, congratulations. Happy birthday. You get to hang out with us and talk about animation.
You just gave him our presence is the present.
Yeah. Doesn't work. He's hanging out.
Thank you, Uncle Earl. Thank you, Uncle Earl.
So, what are we doing here? So, Samantha and I have been scheming probably for, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks, Samantha.
I don't mean to interrupt, but as soon as you said scheming, I don't know, the timing is wild.
What am I scheming on?
I don't know. I mean, it just happened, it just seemed appropriate that as soon as Renee talked about being involved in some scheme, you popped up.
Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah.
All good. Sundays are rough. I had it open because I didn't want to mess around and look up at 3:03 and not be on here, because that would be typical Renee fashion to be like, oh, my bad, it's after 3:00. So I was just explaining to everybody, you haven't missed anything. We've just been chit-chatting how this all came to be, which was to, why are you shaking your head, Jared? What happened?
No, I think I just removed him by accident. Sorry.
Okay. So Samantha and I have been talking about how to utilize some of the multitude of talents that we have access to do things that are actually beneficial to the general society. So thinking about, all these conversations that we have regularly about books and movies and all these things, and how it's all propaganda. And then we ended up having a very good conversation on Friday. Shout out to Matthew Solomon. If folks missed that, go back and watch that conversation, because we talked a lot about how these things all work between first cinema and non-first cinema. And, amongst our little crew of people who actually care about people, we have really talented animators. We got people with really good voices who have already talked over animations. We have people who understand media. We have producers. We have, this is all of y'all, by the way. I'm just the idea person here, because I don't really have the capability to do any of this stuff. But I can give a good idea and pull everybody onto a call. So, so my thought was, how do we really use this as a tool for the things that we think are important? Like, can we use animation to teach political education? Can we use animation to propagandize towards a socialist, economy? Like, can we use animation to really clear up some things that people often question, but maybe don't have a really simple way to understand it, to explain to other people? And as Samantha and I we're kicking ideas around and is this something we can do? How do we manage it? All these things. I was like, you know what? Let's bring the crew in and let's have a conversation about it. And, because we have the ability to share with our wonderful Patreon members, let's share it with Patreon. I'll take some notes and we can see, am I crazy, or is this something that we could actually pull off and really, come together to find ways to give people information that's beyond the typical we're all sitting on the screen talking about stuff. So that's where this all started, so people know. And I don't really have a full out plan in our spreadsheet, Jared, in our Saturday spreadsheet. I don't know if you remember that there's a Patreon tab, but there is a Patreon tab. And currently on there are links to various versions of animated videos and a link to a clip of a Kwame Ture speech that one time I saw an animation of, and I'm almost 100% positive that it was something that you, Jared Ball, ended a show with. But it was an animation with Kwame's speech playing over it. And he was just doing sketching the t-shirt. And I can't find the animation anywhere, but I found the speech. And so I'm hoping this triggers that maybe somebody else will know how to find the animated thing. But
I don't remember.
I know you don't remember, but I figure maybe if you hear the speech, somebody else will recall this, because it was dope. The person animated the t-shirt and the whole thing. But you could play a little bit of it because it's about capitalism, and it's the perfect thing to put an animation to.
And of course, Afro Marxist has it. So here we go.
And clearly, when we talk about capitalism, who are the capitalists? As if we understand that there are only a few people who own and control the means of production in the society, then we begin to understand that there are a few capitalists. And these capitalists exploit everybody because everybody works for them. Everybody sells their labor to them. It is by selling your labor to a capitalist that he's really able to exploit you. Instead of going through theories, let me give some direct example. Let's say that I'm a capitalist. And let's say that I sell shirts. I sell shirts. I have a shirt factory. Let's say this is my factory. I own it. The machinery. I have a place where I get cotton. Now, I own it. I'm the capitalist. Let's say you are my workers. You are my workers. You don't know me. You never see me. You see my lackeys, maybe my foreman, but you never see me. Now, let's say it costs me 50 cents for cotton for every shirt I make. And let's say it costs me 50 cents for upkeep of my machinery. That's $1. And let's suppose I pay you $1 for every shirt you make. That means it costs me
Jared,
$2
feel free to
get
end
a
this
shirt.
whenever. It's just
labor included,
a sample
your labor.
for people to understand.
Yeah, okay.
But so there's an animated video somewhere of someone sketching a t-shirt and then drawing the little people. See, Geechee, just, you know what I'm talking about, right? I was I can't find it. I've been looking for it for 3 days. I can't find it. I don't know if maybe the channel got shut down that it was on. I have no idea, but I can't find it. But this was the thing, that video, that animation with Kwame Ture's voice is something that has played and lived rent-free in my head ever since I saw it, Jared, at the end. And you played it at one point at the end of something that you did. You were like, this is the perfect explanation of how capitalism works. And you played it. But Lord knows there's too many videos you have. There's no way I'd find it. So, but that's kind of what the basis of my whole thinking behind this is, because it was such a clever way to get people to understand what capitalism was. So you have Kwame Tore's voice, you have him breaking it down, you have the sketch of the person doing the t-shirt and the whole thing. And it was like the perfect combination of things. So any thoughts so far?
I mean, go ahead, Jab, and then I'll go in.
No, I just wanted to clarify the thoughts on the question of can animation be used? Is
This idea, this general idea that I have, is this crazy, or is this something that we think is doable?
Well, go ahead, Jab. I mean, what I'll say is no, it's not crazy because it has historical precedent. That's the first thing I will tell you. There is a lot of moving parts. It's almost wish I had this conversation with you before, because there's an essay that I just finished rereading by Solanas and Gattino called Militant Cinema. And they wrote it 2 years after their first Third Cinema essay. And in the Militant Cinema essay, they get into how kind of the Third Cinema movement have been working, and some of the findings that they had and some of the things. And one of the things that they isolated was like the different types of films that could be made. And one they said were like, films that were going to be pieces that were, to work for the public, to kind of, do public awareness or advocacies for particular groups. Some they said they felt were just going to be for educational pieces that were just for like specific groups. Like if there was a strike that needed to happen, kind of similar to like Finally Got the News. Like Finally Got the News wasn't really just for the general public, but it was for like, the people who did not know about the auto workers issues, and the fact that they wanted to kind of galvanize those people to join the strikes and join the movement. And then some of them they said would even be macro political education that would even be first focused for just in the party and in the community. Like they could make macro little small films and so he talks about all this stuff. And it was interesting rereading it, because I was like once again like re-inspired, and I'm doing this presentation next week on revolutionary cinema at Villanova, and I'm talking about a few of these things. There are like infrastructure questions that I think ends up happening around like labor, and all of these are questions that can't be answered. I'm not saying they're like unanswerable questions around labor, a lot of different things. And it's in short, not to like take up too much of the time. Yeah, no, like I think it's perfectly reasonable. It's not crazy, and animation can be a great tool. One of the things they said was it should be genre less. One of the things they actually criticized was that they felt documentary became way too much. They said because documentary was in some ways the easiest to make, just like documenting things that happened and then cutting it up together. They felt there were too many documentaries. They felt that people weren't doing different types of forms. And this is like the early 70s. They weren't kind of playing with different types of things. But they said there should be musicals. They said there should be animations. They said there should be narratives, all types of stuff. They said you should be running the gambit. The form, in terms of like style or quote unquote genre, really isn't the issue as much as the politic, the mode of production is a big issue. And this is something I think they begin to identify, but if I have not a critique because it's a different time. The other big thing is just where does it live? And I think that actually is our biggest issue, is like, do we do this? How do we get it to the people? Do we create a certain types of networks? This is to me the biggest challenge of it all. I actually think producing it, if you have the will and you have the people, might even in some ways be the easiest at the beginning. Keeping a constant stream of production will, I think, take some time. I think the distribution, in a way that we feel works for us, I think becomes the most challenging. And I have some thoughts around that, but I don't want to go there right yet. I'd rather hear other people speak first. But I actually have some big thoughts on that I've talked to a few people. I've talked to Samantha about it a little bit, and others. And I've said this, I think, in passing to Jab and other folks, and like but I have some bigger thoughts that I've been materializing in my own head. But I'll step back.
Should I say something? I think it could be totally possible. And I think, I mean, I guess, yeah, in terms of distribution, I think there's a few options that we could go with, but I think visuals work really, like, especially, I don't know, I think there's a lot of options, like animation, like if you were going to do like Disney animation, it would be very expensive, but if you're doing like it doesn't also have to be like, you could have something that looks like that most people think is an animated film, but it actually doesn't have any animation in it. Like if you use motion graphics and you create an illustration and you separate things on layers, you can actually create depth. You know, so like the one that I think Geechee, you narrated it with the black ants and the elephants. Instead of having like just the illustration, well, you can have that. You can have the illustration where the camera's moving along it, or you can separate the illustration on layers, like the characters are on different layers in the background. So as the camera moves, the layers move like at different times, and it just gives it depth and it creates some movement, and it's not technically animated, but it can look animated. So I feel like there's several tiers depending, like you could do something where that might only involve one artist or two artists. And then, you know, sorry, in terms of making the production, like the conceptual, like the story or all that might, you know, that would be different, but just in terms of producing it. And then if you wanted to put animation in it, like that might be more time consuming and you might need a couple more people involved. But I think and I guess it depends on the length of the content and stuff too. And there's different, there's so many options, and like just tiers, like I guess how
fancy we want to be. So real quick, Jared, if you don't mind. So there's a link to Geechee's one of his stories, the one that Samantha just referenced on the chart. And then there's also a link to something else Samantha sent me. Treasure Island. It's like a preview, and that's gonna show us the two versions.
Like what you could,
you know, what the two different versions that Sam just talked about.
The little black ants.
This for the audience this is Geechee's, which I think people will know once it starts.
African working class folktale, written by my dog Asafo Shaka Sekou, illustrated by Infinite W. Rice, and read by, how you mean, your boy Geechee Motivator, a PISB publication. The little black ants, them boy community been real, man. Them boy always been working, and everywhere they go, them boy move together, and they always look out for each other too. The reason why them boy got to be so careful, cause them boy been so little, and them boy been scared somebody been gonna step on them. In the ant village, ain't none of them ant been lacking. Them boy colony been organized up, yo. Every ant had biddle, so ain't none of them boy go hungry. All them boy had a place to lay head. The little black ant only work together. Each of them boy get whatever they need. One of them boy be tilling the land, and the other one, he be planting the seeds. Some of them boy be going hunting for more biddle, and some of them stash it when they get them. You got them boy over there cutting the wood, and some of them boy be looking out while your neighbor knock out. They teach all each turn the traditions and how a real ant move. Which ant ceremonies them boy supposed to observe, and the ancestors them boy supposed to praise. Everybody.
The other, not to cut off, and people should go really watch those because they're so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
The Treasure Island, hopefully I label it right. It says Treasure Island on there, right?
Allez, vas-y, raconte, papy.
Ah, mais c'est que ça remonte maintenant. Je devais avoir 12 ou 13 ans. À l'époque, j'habitais chez mon oncle qui m'avait recueilli. Il tenait une auberge à Bristol. Moi, je m'ennuyais. Je rêvais d'aventures comme les gosses de mon âge. Et puis un jour, tout a basculé avec l'arrivée de Billy Bones. Il avait la carte du Nil sur lui. Pas à n'importe quelle île. L'île au trésor. Alors, avec mon oncle et le docteur Livesey, on a filé à Hong Kong.
I think the point's made. People could tell me, but you can see kind of the difference between the layers and just the panning of the animation, I think, right? So everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just like so there's no animation in that. So the labor is just creating the illustration in the same way, but you just like, I think people do that in like After Effects, or there might be other motion graphics software, which I haven't really learned because I've always given my artwork to someone that did that. But the learning curve for that wouldn't be like, I feel like that's something anybody can just learn. And then it just adds that depth and movement to it a little bit. And then later in that video, like, it's not necessary to bring it up, but there's even one character that was just in a running pose, and then they just move him, across the screen. So it's not even animated, but you just, get that, that kind of, feel to it. And the nice thing about that is that sometimes when you're doing animation, the images aren't going to be as nice as if you illustrated it, because you kind of have to have images that can be managed, that can be redrawn consecutively. And then the next tier, if we were investing a bit more in it and we actually got certain softwares, like in television animation, they have the illustrations, then they put bones in them and they break it up so that they become cutout animation. And then you can, do all, and something I wanted to say, but I don't think it would be in your folder, but there's these artists that I know in Gaza, Hanin Koraz and Noor Al-Jawad, and they're doing, they go around and they make stop motion films every week or every 2 weeks with groups of children. And and so it takes them a whole week to do the project, and they have a group of children that they all work together, and they're doing it because they have literally no resources. They draw the characters, they cut them out, they've got their iPhone positioned as a camera, and then they do these stop motion films, and they're telling stories of life right now and how their life has been. And
I just dropped the link, Jared, for one of the ones, because I've been watching these on your
and doing
on
amazing
Instagram.
Storytelling with limited resources, so even stop motion that could be done digitally, I mean, we've got slightly better resources on our own computers that we can.
فيش طيران، فيش قصف، بدي اروح اتحمم. لا 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 لا، واخيرا هتنضف يما، هشوفك نضيف. اسمع يا اصيل، هاتي لي الترنج اللي شريته من شهرين خليني اتحمم. حاضر، من عينيا التنتين، هروح اجهز لك اياه. وطلع الزلمه من الحمام، والله واسم الله عليه. قصف! يما يما! وين راحوا كلهم؟ شردوا الترنج تبعي. شردوا بالصلاة البسه. يما تعالي يا اختي، تعالي يا اختي، ليش خايفة؟ تعالي عندي بالخيمة. أنا عخر الزمن يحكوا لي يا اختي ولابس ثوب صلاة. الله يقطع الحرب.
So that's the sample. That's the stop animation, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah, and they're just doing it with paper and cutouts. But I mean, we've got digital tools that even, that even makes it a little easier if we were doing it digitally and stuff too. So yeah, I think that there, and I don't know if this is true, because I feel like I really need to revisit all of my film and animation history from what I actually was taught in school, because I feel like that was certainly biased. But I do remember at one point there was a conversation too, and probably Mtume, you probably might know this, but I think also just anime being so popular in Japan because shooting locations in space were more expensive. So there's a bigger industry for animation, because if you're not doing Disney high-end animation, all these anime shows, you know, a lot of them are just like one drawing with the mouth moving, and they create all these series. So I mean, I feel like there's like just different, depends on how like aesthetically what level we want to take it to. But I think like what we were saying with Matthew's film, I think if you have a good like if you're very like educated in the craft, you can make decisions that look way better than if you had all the resources and stuff. Your technique can, you know, you can do more with technique than you can with resources.
Okay, that's good to know. Geechee, Jab, Jared, anything?
I'll just. Oh, go ahead, Geechee.
No, I'm just saying I'm just blown away by all of the wealth of knowledge here. And I think on on the side of the production and distribution, like the level of just detail that I just received just now was beautiful. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is like the logistical end, right? I mean, I think a lot of this is conversations with folks like Samantha. It's also like, I mean, one of the things I find is, so we have a Discord for millennials. I think y'all have a Discord too, probably, right? And like, there's so many people that we all know, but we don't really like take the time to figure out like what skills does everybody have that's like connected in, and what would they be willing to, you know, volunteer versus like what, you know, like what. And I think that's maybe that's getting into a little bit of what Mtume was talking about in terms of like, you know, questions on the production end, questions on, you know, the labor end, right? Because I think that's the thing, you know, is obviously some people have a job, right? And they are organizing, but they might have a little bit of time that they can give to something like that. And they'd be willing to just do it because they just support the idea of the project, right? Some people don't have a job, right? Because of political stances that they've taken that, you know, make it hard to work in their industry or whatever, right? And like, but have a lot of skills, right? And so ensuring that people have the resources that they would need to be able to actually dedicate time to it, right? I think is the main thing. And I mean, obviously I say that obviously as somebody who has been able to basically be a full-time podcaster for the last like, you know, 4 years, I guess, at this point. You know, and that I can only do that because people give enough on a monthly basis that it like, okay, I can kind of make it work, me plus what my wife is able to do, you know, with her job and all of that. And so I think it's a question of organization and you know, getting the right skills together. I think what Samantha's saying makes a lot of sense to me of like, you know, depending on how much, like, who are the people in the room, what skills you have, how much time people can dedicate to it. There's different levels of what you can create. Um, but like to the initial question you asked, you know, I mean, obviously Mtume brought up examples of, you know, revolutionary folks within the US context who have done this. Obviously, there's a lot of examples of socialist states that have also dedicated, you know, national resources to these projects, right? And whether that's making film, I'm sure I don't know as much about the animation history, but I'm sure that there is one, right? Like if you looked at, I mean, I know like China had like a Karl Marx cartoon series a couple years ago or whatever. Like, you know, so there are, you know, obviously Vietnam, Cuba, you know, Yugoslavia, USSR. Like you can look at these histories of how did people, you know, who wanted to, recognizing that all media is propaganda, like that's what it is, you know. And so the question is just, you know, how do we make different types of propaganda to try to connect with different audiences, and recognizing that something like animation is something that serves a specific purpose, you know, taps in potentially to a specific audience, maybe has like more shareability for a lot of folks, like, because there's also kind of the cool factor of people rarely see animation that is radical or revolutionary. But there's also like, even like, one example I was thinking of is, we did an interview a couple of years ago, and I forget their name, but there's these not animators, like graphic artists in the UK who took CLR James's play on Toussaint Louverture, right? Like the Haitian Revolution, right? And they made a graphic novel off of the CLR James play, basically. And so, like, those kind of things are similar, but I agree that, like, it would be awesome to have more stuff that's visual, in that vein. But I think it's totally possible. It's like just the question of, and then when you start to get into the resource question, right, it becomes like, do you try to get grants for this type of stuff, or do you try to get a big donor, right? And then I'm not necessarily advocating that, right? Because then you become beholden to, like, okay, they're good for popular education around certain things, but they don't want you making popular education about other things, right? And so you're going to lose your funding stream when you start making the animation about Gaza or whatever else, right? And so there's those kind of questions, which is why, in many ways, I have a love-hate relationship with Patreon, which I'm sure all of us kind of do to some extent. But the ability of people to just say, like, you know what, like, we want to fund this creator, and I'm going to put my $1 or my $5 or my $10 or whatever into that, and pool together resources for something. It's been quite an innovation, I think, in terms of allowing creatives on the left to be able to, like, get some resources to support their work in an easier way, and allow people also to get their material directly to folks. But then there's also becomes the questions and issues around, paywalling, and do I do that? Do I not? Do I do exclusives? Do I do, all of these kind of things? And those, I think, are questions that we're kind of boxed into, but are not necessarily politically what we want to be boxed into either. So I don't know what the people ask me all the time, like, what the solution is outside of it. And I don't really have a good answer for that. Because we are in this capitalist society, and we have to figure out ways to finance the work that we want to do. But those are kind of the thoughts in my head, because I mean, I'm obviously not an artist in that kind of vein, and I don't know too much about the technical aspects that, like, Mtume and Samantha are more knowledgeable about, in terms of what it actually takes. But I think that, it's not an unreasonable project at all. I think it's a great idea.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Go ahead,
yeah.
Jared. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, I mean, my only issue ever comes in at the level of distribution. So similar to what Jared was talking about in terms of funding and all of that, it's not a question of talent and capability. It's well, I would now add the new level of Mtume influence thinking that says something about how we have to find ways to condition audiences to see and appreciate media that is different in form from a Hollywood blockbuster. But other than that, it's always just distribution. How do you make something popular? How do you get it? How do you get it to audiences that you would want to then influence with the propaganda? And that's always the part I struggle with the most, figuring that part out. But other than that, yeah, no, I have no doubt that a lot of great art is being made and can be made. I was just reviewing for my classes the discussions that I was having with Todd around cartoons as propaganda, and how the state and the National Association of Manufacturers and others used cartoons primarily again after the Second World War, to recondition American citizens back into capitalism and free market fundamentalism. And then we were talking about the How to Read Donald Duck book and how imperialism finds its way and can and its use in film and in cartoons and all of that as well. So it's not a question of can art and animation or any form of art be propaganda in any form. It's just how do we get it seen? Yeah.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Oh no, I know a lot of my colleagues like that a lot of the older generation at Disney that didn't want to transition into 3D, they sort of went off on their own and started just making short little films, and they would use crowdfunding. And some of them, just because of like having worked at Disney, or that there's such a big fan base of people that love animation, they would even make up to $500,000 on or more from crowdfunding, just because it was, and most people didn't even know what the story was going to be about. They just really wanted to see support, like, and like there's a culture, I think there's a niche culture that definitely supports it. So I think that, and I know, like, and I think it, you know, again, it sort of depends on the length of the film. Like, I think you definitely need a grant or something if you're doing like a 20-minute film, but if you were doing like a 3 to 5 minute film, it's way more like, and like I said, there's different tiers. So it really can be like, you wouldn't need like $500,000 or something like that too. So I think that you can create something that's very aesthetic, that doesn't have even the budget that maybe even live action might require, just because of like the organizing of getting a lot of people on a location or something like that. So I think that as far as distribution, I don't know, because outside of the mainstream, that's the only concern is like if it's not pushing a mainstream kind of story, it's sort of harder to get it into these like animation festivals or animation distribution programs and stuff. But I think that there could be a possibility, you know, like I know, like from what I've seen with colleagues, people got funding just because people wanted to see the film, you know, and there were the different tiers, like if they did it on a, you know, one of these crowdfunding programs that you have different rewards, like some people, if they gave like a lot of money, they'd even get a credit or something in the film or things like that, that it didn't necessarily have to be a big material expense for the rewards, but there was definitely a niche. There is a niche of people that just really wants to see animated content.
So I'll add only that, like, I'm not, and this is my own fault with this, is like the whole idea of distribution and like that extra step was like outside of my kind of role. I was more like, if we do a really good animation that explains why Black buying power like is not a thing, right? And then anytime we talk about Black buying power, we show this little, you know, 2 to 3 minute animation that explains like why it's not a thing. Or whenever somebody posts something about Black capitalism, we say, well, watch this because Black buying power is not a thing. Like, but in my head, that's where you start, right? So like you start with using these things as propaganda tools. You try to, that's why my hashtag is what it is, because I'm also thinking about what oh, I just blanked on his name. Oh my goodness. From Breakthrough News. How did I do that? Eugene, yes. Eugene said about breaking the algorithm, right? Like flood the algorithm. So if you do something that is really well done, is simple, but does some, can we break the algorithm with something like that? And then can we use it in multiple places to allow people to actually just get the information, right? And I don't know if this is, I could be thinking about this all wrong, because I'm not, like, this is not my industry. It's more me just trying to find another pathway of giving people something that I feel like they're in dire need of, but it's just not something that we're doing like in this current moment, if that makes sense. And Tume, you had something?
So I actually have quite a lot of things. because this is actually kind of where I've been sitting. I mean, I've been an independent filmmaker for over a decade, and I'm actually about to record a big episode on my Patreon about my experience premiering my film and kind of what I've realized. And I also got like a weird, unprincipled criticism by someone on the internet that was whack, and like stitched together shit that I said. And I need to kind of clear up some things. But one of the things that I've kind of come to kind of give it some brevity, not to like go super long now, is that kind of touching on the multiple things is I think the instinct is correct. Like this idea that we need to kind of build a conglomerate the same way that the studios do to get things done. I think it's a falsehood, but to me it needs to like extend. So one of the things that like all really radical filmmaker groups is you see is even now is everyone is multi-skilled, right? Like everyone learns how to edit, right? Everyone learns how to do these types of things. And a lot of, I think Samantha brought it up, like some of these things are things that anybody could learn, right? If you have the will to learn. I was just talking to comrades at my party and I said, like, look, basic camera understanding to get demonstration footage is actually not that hard to learn. Once you learn just the kind of the basics of white balance and ISO and stuff like that, anybody can learn it, especially with autofocus. Like there's certain things like that. Now, if you want to become a more skilled cinematographer, there is another level. But to a certain degree, like some of these things are kind of entry level and you can learn it. And it is best that if you're in a kind of cadre form of people working, that you do all learn it, right? So you're not reliant, because that is also when you're reliant in that real Fordist way that Hollywood works, right? You're reliant on that kind of mode of production where you're going to need the top-down person. And we can't sustain that for the reasons that people have said here. Like people got jobs. I mean, Jay talked about people got jobs. They got these commitments. We just can't sustain that. And that's what I learned through independent filmmaking, trying to do radical work. I was still following that old model and it just didn't work. Now, part of the issue is finding people who were professionals who wanted to dive into that with me. And honestly, for the most part, there aren't that many people who want to do that. They still want that professional career. Sam and I have talked about this. This is part of the contradiction, and stuff like that. So that's part of the things. Where I've kind of going, and I'm kind of letting the cat out the bag a little bit, is I actually think there needs to be a Revolutionary Arts International. And this does not come from a non-press, it comes from a precedent. I stole this from Glauber Rocha. Like I'll read, he wrote an essay in 1967 called The Cinematographic Revolution, because he was going to film festivals. He was trying to develop work. He was screening, not screening. He was realizing people in other countries were having issues. And he basically said, we need to organize globally. Each nation needs to have their own national movement of revolutionary arts. And then they need to have an international that they basically like co-support each other. I mean, I could read a few of the things that he advocated for. I have it here. Where is it? Yeah, like he said, like, yeah, the cinematic avant-gardes of each country should get together to organize a new production and distribution policy based on the specific set of contradictions of each country. These avant-gardes, once organized, should promote a cinematographic international in order to create the means for international production and interdistribution. The national international organization needs a front of filmmakers, critics, professional producers, actors, technicians, and people who are directly and indirectly interested in cinematic revolution. I mean, it goes on for a while. And what he's talking about, I think, is the same thing that people in political organizations talk about. And I think it has to be thought in that kind of same kind of way. And as I've been thinking more, I've been wondering if this is maybe one of the mistakes that even the media class needs to kind of think more about too. Though I don't really consider myself, I would say Jab and Jay would know more about the and Renee even now that because you do that, all that. Y'all know more of that part than I do. I'm more in the arts, right? And that kind of politics, but I think there needs to be kind of a more united front of that, because the other big contradiction that we can't ever get around is the digital sphere. And I think, and there's a thing that I was approached to kind of think about through someone, and one of my one of my issues was that it all was going to be done through the digital sphere, and that was going to be the end point. And I said to him, I was like, at this point, having dealt with another kind of hierarchy of film festivals and film distribution, stepping into another hierarchy like that to kind of do my thing, I've been, I realize I don't think that's going to work. So, but I think there are alternatives, and I think there are different kinds of ways. Like, do we maybe do things directly for organizations? Like, I don't, do we create stuff that goes directly to orgs in connected to orgs? Do we have an org and we're basically based on that, and we become the political propaganda center that everyone takes, and they take it to their orgs and they take it to their communities, so forth and so on. I think there's other ways that we could be thinking about this. And I also think that we should, because I think we have to stay here, definitely in the YouTubes and on the Apple Podcasts as long as we can, because the people are at. But I think we can't end here. And that's kind of where I've been. And then I think I have one last point that I wanted to make. And oh, yeah. And then to Jay's point, I mean, yeah, my daughter watches Cheburashka, the really famous Soviet stop and go animation joint. My daughter watches it. I think it's dope. There's lots of that stuff. I've been trying to dig through it. It's funny because when Jab and I spoke at the Historical Materialism Conference, remember we got that question from a young woman who asked us about animation and socialists and stuff like that, and I didn't know, and I was like, that actually sent me down a hunt to go start looking for stuff. But yeah, this is a big thing. I'm actively working on personally, and because and I'll say this at the end, and I've taken some flack for this. I don't think these structures. I think we have to really organize to get beyond these structures. Because it's just my experience in life, and after a while you get burnt out from it because it basically blood sucks from you, even when you're doing radical shit, and then you can't survive anymore. And I did the radical stuff. Oh yeah, the last thing, the grant stuff. Yeah, that to me is a, and I've been dealing with that. I got to finish a grant tonight, but there has to be other funding streams. I think us trying to do what we want through grants, I think is always going to be a bottleneck. And crowdfunding, I think, is good for the beginning. I crowdfunded my first 3 films, but I had to stop because you do eventually drain if you try to go for bigger numbers, right? And I'm not talking about even that bigger numbers. Eventually, it kind of hits walls unless you've really expanded your network, right? If it's the same network, it does hit like a bit of a wall. I do think for like first or second projects, it's smart. I think you should get your people to do it. But I think after a while, you definitely hit a wall. Like I hit that wall. I can't really crowdfund projects through my stuff anymore. I did it, and like I wouldn't be able to get the amount of cash that I did before some years ago. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. And so because we all kind of talk offline, like I knew this has been playing in your mind in Tume, which is why you were on the list on the list of people, right? Because I feel like we all bring like kind of a different piece of this to the table that I don't think it can be. I don't know if anything that I dream of doing can be realized without the help of everybody that's on the screen. And that doesn't mean there aren't people who could be involved who aren't here right now. It's just like 6 already is a lot on the screen at once. So you have to like, navigate who you bring to the space initially. But I think into what you just said about like, like do you create PE that like organizations use, and then they use it in their community and then they move forward. And I think about like what Matthew said on Friday about, he made this documentary. It was something that he did as part of like a graduate school program because that's what his advisor told him to do. And then he went with the plan of just doing community screenings, right? So he's been all over the country working with different organizations and different people and doing screenings so that people just see the film, right? And he did eventually get to like a point of, where like he got picked up by a distribution group. So, now you can get the movie on like Amazon and Apple and all these different places. But I think it took until like his 50th or 60th screening before it got to that place, right? And so, so there's also a part of this that's just me not really being sure, like, what is the next step, like, at this point, right? So on Friday, we talked about budget stuff, like, can you get away with like a really small budget to do something like this? And I'll admit, like, selfishly, like, I'm like, Samantha's so talented, like, how much can we steal of Samantha's like talent to use for something like this, right? Like, Geechee, outside of being able to do voiceover stuff, like, Geechee's been organizing in all kinds of spaces for all kinds of times, as Ntume has, as Jared, so there are all these different things that I feel like if we find a way to organize ourselves, maybe we just do one thing, like we pick one thing, we do one thing, we see like, what can we do with this one thing? And then we go back to, okay, like, now let's see how that went. And what could we have done better? What can we change? What can we do for the next one? And because sometimes I worry about, like, when you think of like the big picture, right? Like, when you think of the distribution and how do you pay people and all these things, you get so bogged down with all of those things that you end up not getting to the place where you actually produce something. And so I want to make sure that also, on top of everything else, like, listen, I'm a very like, like, I used to consider myself like somebody who knew how to draw when I was in high school. And now I look back at that stuff and I'm like, oof, I don't know about that. But right. So like, so I just wanted to say that out loud. Like, there are a lot of places that we can go to think of this. And I appreciate how much like lived experience Ntume has with this specifically, because I feel like between Ntume and Samantha, we have a unique access to a level of knowledge that most people simply do not have access to, like, period. And I think that could really benefit us if we decide to move forward. Like, I think that could be a really, like, I just feel like it's invaluable what everybody who's here could bring to trying to make this thing actually be a thing.
I want to read one quick thing also from Solanas and Katina, because I think it addresses this quality question in a really good way. So he has this piece of his essay where he says, what is the appropriate technique for each film? And once he talks about like the different ways that things can like be used. Is like also from 1971. So he's saying you can use 35, 16, Super 8. It's not really about the format that you use. But then he says this that I think is very important. He says, once a technique is chosen, the work of the militant group will tend to be simplified and make possible the greatest technical expressive rendering once the language and expression are in intimate relation to the technique that is used. The group must test, create, and invent simple technical solutions that achieve the same results or results superior to those techniques completed with conventional apparatuses. The competence and technical ingenuity of a group are transformed in their own practice by demonstrating political competence. So how I understand that is that the group must test and create and invent simple technical solutions. It's basically what we said. It's like, look, what you have access to, that's what you use, right? But he does posit that actually might be even more radical than what these people with millions of dollars and even better are able to do. He's like, don't be like afraid of like your limited resources. Like, that's not this idea of high resources needing be the only way to make great things is basically bourgeois ideology. I mean, we saw this with hip hop, right? I mean, is it not like the great lesson of hip hop? They didn't have bands, right? But then Jazzy J and all these and Grand Mix of DXT and all these folks figured out how to make something that's monumentally creative by sampling and chopping and doing all this stuff. That's now a mainstay in all music, even beyond hip hop, right? And he says it becomes this way of approaching becomes the political form. So I think to what Samantha was saying earlier, it's just in complete unison, right? You take these techniques, but our political aims are imbued in it, we're going to come up with something that is super radical. So I actually, like I said, that part of it, I think if we have the desire and we're willing to learn and to like do things amongst each other, I think we can really hit high heights. Personally, I have no worries about that. I think we have to be just thoughtful in the back end, because like I tell you, I'm just gonna say this as a person who's done independent stuff. There is a time when you have like an expectation that you think it's gonna do something, and then it kind of falls flat, and it's hard on your soul. It really is, right? And I've just been there, and I continue to be there, and you're in this constant conundrum. But the thing that I realize is that I've done it mostly alone, and I think that there has to be a broader kind of scope where we're working. Like honestly, I don't understand why there's not a revolutionary communist film festival. You know what I'm saying? And like, if you're doing bourgeois shit, you're excluded. That's the point of entry. You know, like that kind of stuff, right? Or anti-imperialism film festival. That is the point of entry. And if they know it's there, they're gonna spend the year making stuff and then bring that stuff, and it's global. And that's kind of where my brain is going, because, and I'll say this into the end, the reason why people who I think could do radical work aren't doing the radical work sometimes is because all they have is the big grant places that minimize them. And all they have is the Cannes film festivals, and they have the Sundances, and they have all that. They would rather, I talk to people all the time, they would rather not do some of that shit or have to like limit their talk. They would rather honestly be like, yo, fuck Zionism, right? Blow up this shit. They would rather be super didactic, but they're not able to. So that's kind of like, yeah, I know I keep saying all that, but I'll leave it at that.
I think that creating animated content can be, I think it's a lot easier than doing live action on your own. Like I think because you don't have to, like you don't necessarily need to be dealing with locations or lighting or having a crew or having people in front of the camera and behind the camera. Like the things that we showed earlier could be done with one person, really. Like and you can, depending on like, I mean, I did my student film, which was 2 minutes. I did it in a weekend. I did it in like less than 72 hours. And like, cause I didn't end up coloring it. It was all pencil, and I just used a gray wash, like watercolor for the backgrounds. And like the whole thing was animated in a Disney style, but it was just all the pencil drawings. I didn't do the coloring or anything like that. So I think that there's a lot of options that can be done. And just from listening to everyone, like if we're doing like, I don't want to say like an infomercial, but let's say you're doing a 2-minute film to illustrate Kwame Ture's speech, or something that would be like that. You're like, look at this when you want to understand this concept, and it's only 2 or 3 minutes long. Something like that could be very easily done without like a ton of grant money or anything. And then like what you were saying, Mtume, like maybe the first, like if you're doing a short film, let's say it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that could be crowdfunded. And then once you have enough of those, I just feel like there's so many models. I actually really like that idea of applying, like offering to do services for organizations that are aligned with you, so you could become the production company. So let's say you do one little short film that's like illustrating something that you're going to share on your YouTube channel. And then because you have that, and it can be part of your crowdfunding campaign to say like, this is what we can do, and this is our idea, and we need some support for it. Then you do another film, and you've created more of a portfolio, I guess, to show people your work. And then you can start building almost like a little mini studio. And then maybe those can be the people that you work with, or these organizations that might have a small budget, but they would like something that you can, because I've seen so many models of this, like just not in a radical space, but like people that didn't want to work in the industry anymore, people that I know that they would start their own small studios, and they do like credits, or small TV commercials or something like that. And then that helped to fund their own projects. Or another model that a lot of people do is this like online educating or mentoring things, and they've started a school where they use their talents to help teach people like this, like animation skills or drawing skills or storyboarding skills. And then that money coming in from courses ends up going and funding projects, and that could even be done to help build the community. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like just strictly commercial. Maybe it could be like, I've always loved that model, but of like, that's what I really love about what Hanin and Noor are doing. They're kind of like halfway school and halfway producing like films, you know. And so you're giving something to the community, you're building your army of artists, teaching them good skills, like teaching them stuff that would normally be only accessible at like an institution like Cal Arts that's like a $50,000+ tuition per year for a 4-year program. But you could make this like, I mean, like, I would do it. Like, I would be happy to teach it, you know, the things that I've learned and stuff. And I love that idea of like helping people get access to have these skills that have always been paywalled or institutionalized and everything, and then they can start producing content. And I think that there's ways that it could grow. But like, just even starting it, like just doing that one project, you know, that you're thinking about for the channel or something is quite accessible. And I think there's also a niche of people, and I don't know if it'll be like this with the radical thing, because like, I've obviously, like, you all know my story with the industry, but I do know, like, in my industry, there's almost like an obsession that people need to see every bit of animation. Like, if something is done aesthetically well, you will get people wanting you to do more of that, just even from that niche group. And so I think that I think there's ways. Like, I'm just hearing the challenges that come up. I think there's ways of working around the challenges that you might not have the same obstacles or as complex challenges in doing it in an animation medium, or even very limited animation medium. But I don't know, because I like, even with the festivals, I'm not sure. But I don't even know, even if it gets into animated festivals, I mean, how many people see animated films from animated festivals?
Right. Geechee, you've been quiet for a while. What are you thinking?
My mind is just blown, because I think I don't know how much we talk, but I remember just like my desire to want to like do voiceovers, cartoons, animation, and all these other things, and I just thought about how overwhelmed I was even trying to figure that out by myself. And then anytime I spoke to any animator, it would have been like thousands of dollars to produce one thing, and I'm like, there's no way that I could scale up or even do anything that serious. And so I think hearing people who's has expertise in like multiple areas and layers that I couldn't even think of myself is exciting. And yeah, I feel like the Power Rangers.
J-Dub, any thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I've talked to you about this, Renee, and I don't know how much. I always forget conversations I've had on the air versus conversations that I haven't had on the air. So maybe people have or have not heard me say this before. But yeah, I mean, I think that my mind, I think actually I did discuss it on the 8th anniversary thing. But my mind is a lot on how do we develop resources that are useful to a larger body of creators that are doing that are like, you know, obviously people connected to organizations, like all of that, but like we have a good community of folks, everybody on the screen and then some, that we all know that you know, we're all streaming right now from, you know, bedrooms or basements or you know, all these different things. And it's amazing. I did talk about this too on the 8th anniversary thing, but Alex Avina, who's been on our podcast like a bunch of times and does great work, he's been on a lot of podcasts, right? But Wired had him come out to do these like short, they're like 30-minute videos on for Latin American History Month, you know, and like he killed it, right? But like, of course he would, but the difference in views, right? It's got like 200, I don't even know where it's at now. I bet it's over 200,000 views, like his video, right? And it's because it's on a huge platform, obviously a mainstream platform, which we're not going to be able to replicate that. But a lot of it also comes down to simple production quality, like assurances, and some having some people around. They're like, okay, this is how the lighting should be set up. These are where the cameras should be set up. Um, you know, People who are used to giving some level of direction and have like a vision of how this is supposed to look aesthetically at the end of the day. Um, and because the content of it, yeah, like he had somebody that was like giving him some feedback and talk through, but basically he developed it right in the same way that he would develop anything that he's going to say on any of our platforms, right? Um, and so the what I'm saying is that there are I think it's also, there's a shout out to another group I've seen, what is their name, the story of capitalism, the story of, I'm forgetting their name, but they also, like, they had Dylan Rodriguez on doing like his discussion of the Democratic Party and them as counterinsurgency, which again is like a discussion he's had it with Jared over the years, he's had it with me, but because it's a very well produced video, right? It just it goes viral, right? Like people see the clip and they share it, and it just, it has, and I think that's just, so I guess all I'm saying is I'm interested in this conversation. I'm also interested in more conversations around like how do we build out a stronger network, and also have resources and people that are accessible to support projects of different different types of projects, right? Getting, building out those people of Mtume, saying like, well, there's not that many who are really willing to step into that space and work the way that he is, but there are people who are, right? And so it's like we need to like identify those folks and figure out how do we work together, right? Like what are the ways, and like what resources does it take, and I think that all of our work, there's what we're going to continue to do in terms of these streams, and like Mtume was saying, like staying on YouTube and Instagram or whatever else, because we are, and there's audiences there, and building those audience is an important thing. I think I've connected with so many people over the last 8 years, um but I think that there's a lot more levels that we could kind of take it to if we're also thoughtful on you know what are the differences between what we're doing aesthetically and other stuff that we see that's like, wow, like that's really well produced, and there's a reason why. I saw somebody sharing like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Owens videos the other day on the left, because of course like they say they have this cynical, but they also are saying anti-Zionist stuff that you won't see liberals saying right now, right? Like you won't see, AOC or Bernie or whatever, any member of the Democratic Party saying some of the things about like, yes, it is a genocide. Like, yes, these are little children. Yes, we should be horrified. Like, you know, and but also the clips were like, they were well produced, and I think there's that element to it too of not being, I guess, so insular or getting stuck in the patterns of the way that we've done things, because it's how we've always done it too.
Thank you. So of course you made me think of something, and then my phone buzzed and I lost track of my thought. But so two things. So Jared, if you could for me, there are two other videos that are in the little in the spreadsheet. Y'all know there's always a spreadsheet. And one is an animation. So that on Friday we talked about Hind's story and how there's like this short now that's gotten very like it's gotten a lot of attention. because of the people who are behind it, which some of those people are questionable. But there's an animation that I had watched a while ago that I had shared with Sam a while back, like maybe a couple of weeks ago, that had, I don't know how much, like on the medium that I shared, the Facebook link that I shared with it, it's only been watched like 1,300 times, but I found it to be a really like moving way to share the actual physical audio from the phone call of Hind, and so how they made that visual. The other one is an AI generated like Pixar version of something, but we can watch a little of the Hind one first, and then we can go to this AI Pixar thing that came across my doom scrolling the other day.
اجي اخدك حبيبتي طيب ما انا يا حبيبتي رح اجي اخدك هلا عمو من الهلال عماله عم بنصك عشان احنا نقدر نيجي ناخدك حواليكي في ضرب رصاص خديني يا حبيبتي والله بدي اخدك بس مش بايدي هلا نحكي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين برافو عليكي هيك حافظة ميتين وهم هلا بالسيارة
This thing makes my stomach hurt every time I watch it, but it's a really, like, to me, and that's not like, and maybe I'm wrong because I don't know much about animation, but to me that seems like something that was drawn by someone who just had the talent to do the basic animation, and then they found creative ways to do the movement. Am I right, Sam? Like,
yeah, you can do that in like I have the software that would let me just put the background there, do the animation on top, and then you can just move the camera.
Okay. And then the other one, Jared, is the Pixar, the ice. I think that's what the row starts with, is ice. And this literally like just came across my doom scrolling yesterday, and I was like, well, this was perfect timing to come across something like this. I think this is the last one that I shared on that spreadsheet.
Didn't wake up, dead or in jail. Some out-of-town boys been giving us hell. I got some bad news. I woke up missing you. My friends are all degenerates, but they're all I got. The generational story of dropping the plot. I heard the cops came. Cocky motherfuckers, ain't they? And ice is gonna come bust down your door. Try to build a house, no one builds no more. But I got a telephone. Kids are all scared and all alone. The bar stopped bumping, the rock stopped rolling. My middle finger's rising and I won't stop showing. Got some bad news, the fading of a red, white, and blue.
So that came across my speed. So obviously people are thinking about things like this, right?
Well, I'll just say, Renee, like that last one is AI.
No, I said think, no. I did. I said yeah, and the person
yeah.
says it's totally AI. So yeah.
Yeah, which I think is the whole other like ethical like conundrum that, you know, I mean, folks have heard conversation. You guys have talked. We've talked to Dwayne Monroe. You know, I mean, but that's what you're also sort of competing against nowadays, in especially on the social media sphere, in this type of work, is that people can do something like that with AI very quickly and relatively easily, and you know, obviously that's it's a whole other can of worms.
That also, like, there's no conversation. Like, it's just like whatever thing AI they put together over music, which I think allows them to use the AI, because there's no, there's no like voiceover. There's no, it's just like clip, how, I don't know how do you make something like that, but however they made it, I would assume is much simpler using the AI than what we're talking about doing, right?
Yeah,
Or no?
basically what they said is they used photographs and then they told it to use a Pixar style to animate them to the music. And so, I mean, that's the thing with AI is like you can give it these commands, right? And depending on which one you're using or whatever, like some of them will try to say, oh, you can't do that because Pixar is a copyrighted, whatever trademark or something like that. But anyway, like that. So it's So the technology exists, but there's all types of ethical questions, I think, around that.
Yeah. But I think also, I mean, I don't know. I'm very I don't know if it'll be something that I do in the next decade or not, but I really am drawn to the idea of having some kind, going back to the old sort of mentorship way that animation studios used to exist. Because I think, I mean, that's another thing that AI can't offer, is that if you're building something that's part community and part telling stories and producing work, that I think that can be something that has a lot of value, regardless as to whether or not the aesthetics are as pristine as what AI or Disney or Pixar could produce.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that AI really offers people is speed, right? Like it's a speed and speed and the myth of expertise. It's a Fortis plant in a box, right? Right. It's for creativity. So I think kind of piggybacking or taking from what Sam just said, I do think it kind of goes back to me. I think the simplest techniques. I mean, I'm even having this revelation with filmmaking. I did my last film, really on a 50 grand budget for a feature length film. Is, if people know the budgets of filmmaking, that's absolutely insane. And I paid everybody. It's not like I didn't pay people, right? I actually paid everyone. Not great things, but we did it in 8 days. I did it in 50 something shots, 88 minutes, which means each shot's about an average of 1.5 minutes, which, if you know about movies, most shots are, I don't know, Sam. I wonder if Sam probably knows this. This was 3, was it 3 seconds? What is it?
Yeah, the ones I work on, it's 3 seconds.
3 seconds. So about 3 seconds a shot.
Yeah, those are Alfred Hitchcock shots.
Yeah. I mean, actually, it's Eastern European, Bellatar and things like that. I mean, he's maybe a little longer than me, but yeah, so. But that had to do with the mode of production to kind of get something done in a particular way. But that's where I'm I feel like people don't need to be, and that's what Jab, talking about what Jab had brought up, the addiction to a certain type of visual sense, I think largely exists. This is something I've been thinking about when you're in places like social media. And this is kind of one of my thoughts. One of the things that I miss, or I've been really kind of thinking about, is the old pirate days, or the old private screenings or guerrilla screenings that people used to do, where they would just take stuff up. And Jab talked about this with the mixtape. I mean, I know so much of Jab's work has been about that, the radical unsanctioned communication. I mean, that's how I learned about you, Jab, writing about that stuff when I was looking for better coverage of hip hop than the BS I was hearing out there from the liberals. But I think there's something about that, and I think we all share this, that ethic. And I'm kind of why can't we do some of that anymore? Why couldn't we create this 5-minute thing, and just bring it right to an org, and I mean, and this is why I've been wanting to get all people in conversation, People's Forum and all this type of stuff, because I'm these spots, they exist. So it's creating these type of things. Yeah.
No, I just want to say I really like that idea. When I hadn't even thought of that until you brought that up today. And I just think that I think for sure there's got to be something there. And those are also spaces that don't usually get to connect with people like yourself to produce this kind of, or be involved with this kind of content. So I think I'm just really fascinated by that. That's all that I have to say. I don't know. Like, it's just, I really, it's just gotten me thinking about a lot.
And the other thing I'll say, and Renee, I'll finish. And one is actually really quick, because when you take them off social media, like if they just watched, I don't know, some highly produced video that looks all flashy, you know, or a Dua Lipa or some Beyonce thing or something, it's like in their head, right? And then they look at a video that has no pizzazz, you know, they're not going to look at it on social media. But I've had people in screenings, right? And they've watched something that was DIY or, you know, rough, independent. And they sat there and they went it and they were like, man, this is great. Right. Because they're not being side flooded on the algorithm by the flashing lights of mass media. Right. So we're in their space. We kind of have to do their thing. So it becomes that thing. When we get out of it, I've noticed that they're able to kind of breathe into it a little bit differently. Right. And I think that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of the science of curation. If you think about art curators, how they curate when they put even the paintings next to each other, that's something that they consider. Like, is this person going to be able to take in this painting and then that painting and then that painting? Right. Or is it going to be a dissonance that's not going to basically make them ignore this other painting because this one had a certain amount of like color or pop or style? Right. It's part of the actual, literally how they choose, you know, hanging paintings on walls in art galleries.
So I wonder though, because it just came up in we were talking about it in our house the other day, but the Blair Witch Project. And the reason I'm thinking of it now is that I sometimes see things go viral that are not flashy. They're not well produced. They're not, or overly there's something still in what you all would know better, you know, something about the lighting or a camera angle or a storytelling tension that you can create even without all of the big pyrotechnics. So I still think that there's some sort of possibility for grabbing someone's attention and giving the, you know, if you can reach their eyeball. So like
Emotion. I think it's the emotion. Sorry, I didn't want to. I think
well, because
also,
everyone thought Blair Witch was real.
That was
the
but it
rumor.
also got heavily promoted. That's the other part of it. That's the other thing I keep
I
keep getting stuck. It did get a lot. Like it didn't look like an Avengers film, but it got like probably relative for the day Avengers type of promotion and coverage. It seemed to get a lot of discussion. But that's the thing. If you can get people to see it, I think then you can. There are ways to grab them. What I keep in listening to this, and I appreciate you bringing up what, you know, little earlier, what little work there is to bring up, but what I really liked about what I was trying to say back then in ways that are more difficult, I think even now to say it, and especially in this medium, is I'm still struggling to find out the way to word it, like in to say what I really want to say and have us not be removed entirely from this medium. But I just think that other forms of activity have to be involved parallel to whatever media is produced in terms of our work we're talking about doing, that would to make it reach a certain audience. And then there's still two levels in the way I think of it. I think of it in the broad, kind of like as I understood George Jackson's argument, that part of what we need to be trying to do with our media is just kind of broadly open up people's willingness and being receptive to ideas of revolution. And then I think in terms of Glenn Ford's argument around like I'm only really trying to make media for a very select, small, specific group of people to inspire them to certain forms of behavior. So it's like these two tiers that I always go back and forth in terms of what is the goal here, what is the intent. And I think if yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else. That's it. That's
So
it.
let me ask this question. Oh no, go ahead, Geechee. Go ahead.
No, I think that just made me think about. I wanted to hear the conversation more around, I guess a different type of media, and then I think, and as Ntumi was saying, like things that people can consume in person, and then what develops out of that. Because like this past weekend when we did our two shows, Sharice solo, and then Jihad's two-man show, and we didn't film anything. Like there was no video, but people kept asking about are y'all gonna film it, or why aren't y'all filming it, or whatever the case would be. And I guess I as I'm hearing Too Many talk and everybody talk, I'm trying to figure out, like, what if the way in which we engage media or use media, like what if we can convince people to value that type of media over like what's dominant, and it starts to, like, just like anything, push people to kind of also creating that type of media. And so yeah, I don't know, I want to hear more conversations around that.
So this brings up actually a related point to what I was thinking about as Jared was talking, which is, like, it doesn't have to be either or, right? It could be like we could start out trying to do something for a particular audience and allow it to grow in a way that is kind of outside of what we planned for, but because it works, we let it do whatever it does, right? I think that's also, I mean, we can't guarantee obviously that would happen, but we don't necessarily have to say, like, it has to be only this one way. Like, we could plan for the first way, and if it works in a way that we weren't really planning for, but it's to the benefit of, spreading, more liberatory and revolutionary propaganda, like, I'm all for that. Right? Not for nothing. And then the only thing I'll say, Geechee, is, like, part of the reason that the show was so good is because it's Sheree doing, like, she's the person, and she's only one person, right? And so if it's not filmed, then how do people get to experience this thing that only she can do? Because she, as one person, can't possibly get to every place and everywhere to present it in that medium. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I agree with you. Like, obviously, if you're doing, we go to a lot of plays, right? Like, y'all know, my husband's all about the play. We go to a lot of plays, and so there's definitely an experience going and watching something in person on stage that you cannot get if you are not watching in person while they're on stage, right? But if you can get like 60% of that by watching it because it was filmed, then that's another one of those, like, go ahead.
You got a George Creel and Hamilton, the project, out. So you get George Creel, you get a whole bunch of people who can mimic what Cherie does to the best of their ability, and then they just have to do it wherever they are. And then when you can make it to the big show and get the big ticket to see Cherie do it herself, congratulations, you've hit the, like when you see, what's his name, Lin-Manuel do Hamilton himself now, like that's supposed to be the big deal, right? That's so like I don't really know what I'm saying, but I think you get
I understand what you're saying.
But I also was, I guess what I was thinking of, so back to the particular audience that we are distributing this thing to. I'm talking about, even if we're not filming, even just to highlight that we didn't film, but if we do film, whether it's motion or still, we get to control how and what we do with that stuff and and we can distribute it, I guess, the way we want to. Because I mean, I don't think the objective is like the essentially grow the audience, but to impact the audience to do something to kind of push.
I mean, that's part of Walter Benjamin's argument of the dangers of mechanical reproduction. And I know Jab is like having that memory of that, right? Jab had that smart. But I think you're touching onto it, Geechee, right there. I mean, that's part of it. What he says is the ritual, right? The authenticity of the exact moment, and the fact that you can't get that moment back, right? Is partly what he's talking about. Now, there might be things that in the update, because he wrote this in the 30s, that he didn't quite see, and that people were able to subvert that. That gets. But I think there is a point there to just kind of reckon and think about it. But to Jab's point about organization and other things that he doesn't want to say, we should watch as a group Red Army PFLP Declaration of War. Is a 1971 film made by the PFLP and also in conjunction with the Red Army faction. Red Army faction. It'd be the Red. Is a Japanese Red Army. I forget what was it? Is that the Japanese Red Army?
The Japanese Red Army, yeah.
Japanese Red Army. One of them was a filmmaker from Japan, and they had a particular way. Yep, they had a particular way that they made this film in 71. And a particular way they went about distributing it, and we could talk about that. And they were part of the global liberation movement in all facets. That's all I'll say. Right? And it's a thing to study, to talk about that. And I think that goes to Jab's point. Like there is a precedent. I mean, that's the thing about Solanas and Catino. They weren't just filmmakers; they were in political party. That's why Rocha, part of why Rocha was exiled from Brazil. He wasn't just making movies; he was part of the party. He was part of the national liberation movement. So,
Samantha, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's just like my mind is turning because I'm just thinking like, just in the spaces that I used to work in, I just think like you could take a story that you're telling and you could bring your audiences into different spaces, because this part of the story could be told through a short film, and then another part is continued through a live performance, and another part is continued through maybe a collective project that could be international, that you connect with people, different groups, and then you all organize, I don't know, like that Michael Jackson Thrill the World where everybody's like dancing Thriller at the same time or something. But, like you could do like, I just feel like, I think if we're imaginative enough and we get people together, because I mean, this is what Empire does. Like Disney makes these films, they sell the products, they have the theme parks, they take you on this experience, they have this experience, they like have, like 1,000 different things. So why not do it for better ideas, for revolutionary ideas? And I think that would, maybe some audiences can't access everything that you do, but there would be ways to take it online and offline. And I don't know. I just think that or even in mediums that are not necessarily media, sometimes maybe part of it could be like a little like short graphic novel or a poster. I don't know. I just think there's so much that could be done. I think so I don't have a solution. I'm just saying, like, I'm kind of just, my mind is.
Go ahead.
I want to say quickly, I'm going to send y'all the Militant Cinema essay, because literally what you just said, they say that you have to identify the different thing. Like he talks about, have y'all ever seen the old short film Now? Y'all have seen that, right? It's like a 5-minute. You've never seen it? It's a really famous. It's to like one of the famous songs.
We talking about stuff like
propaganda, and yours is film.
but it's very famous. People like, I mean, even people show it. It's like it was made. It's like to a great old soul song, right? And like it was just made as like a nice 5-minute agitprop thing, and it's great. It's really powerful, right? And but yeah, like I'm gonna send the essay because what you just said is literally what they say. There's like, you can make like, because he says if you want to make something that's just to like train cadre, don't make it an hour, make it 3 minutes and quick, right? And you make a series of things, right? But if this is for something that you want to basically organize a community around, maybe you need to do a series of things, and you maybe is every quarter you have a 30-minute thing where you're doing a documentary on their organizing so they can have it reflected back to them. I mean, they were doing that heavily in Argentina. Like Argentina was a big place they were doing that. I'm bad with names sometimes, especially when from Latin America. I can't remember them, and I don't want to say them, and then like I say the wrong name, but then I just sound like an idiot. But Sam, exactly what you said, I think is the point. But I do think you have to then identify, right, like exactly what you want, and then the resources kind of go from that. But in that essay, they say all of that, and it's really good. I'll send it, and we can, people read it on their own time. I think it's very, very helpful.
All right, so go ahead, Sam.
No, I was gonna say, like, I feel like I'm, maybe that's the problem, is that I've been used to, just being the creative. Like, I've never had to think about the budgets in the spaces that I worked in. So the way that my mind is going is just like, oh, we could do this and we can do that, and there's just so many things that we could do. But I do think budget, like bringing the budget into it, I do think that there's those different tiers, and I also think there's different, like, some things could be sort of like, I don't know, like an explainer video, right? Or an animated video to a powerful speech or something like that. And then other things could be like the story that you narrated, Geechee, the one that it's actually like, sort of a more imaginative space, like telling stories that help engage people's imaginations to imagine the world that we want to be, to imagine the spaces that we want to be in. So I don't know. Sorry. That's all I want to say. I just think there's lots of ways we could go.
No, that's perfect. And so to bring this, because we got about 20 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I ask this last question that I have written down. So imagining a space where we're just going to move forward, right? We're going to figure something out. We're going to move forward. And I'm going to pose this to each of you. So your answer could be, I can't answer that question right now, and that's fine. But if you have something in your mind as we've been having this conversation, I'm going to write it down. So imagining that we get beyond all of the how-to questions, right? If there was something that you could present in animated form that could be done in, let's say, 2 to 5 minutes, what topic would you want to talk about? Like, what thing would you like? Gets you like, oh, what thing would you want to present? And I'll tell you the thing that came to my mind first when Samantha and I first started having these conversations. I'm always talking about the hamster wheel, right? Like being on this hamster wheel, and you're trying to keep up with your bills and your life and your children and your food and your rent and your da-da-da-da-da-da, and not understanding that you're on this hamster wheel because of these larger things that are happening outside of your hamster wheel that both keep you on your hamster wheel but distract you from the fact that you're on a hamster wheel, right? So like if I could find a way to animate the story of a person running on a hamster wheel and like being completely blind to all of the chaos that's going on and not realizing that that's why they're on the hamster wheel, that would be a short story animation that I would want to tell.
I just want to jump in and just say that's a very easy project to do.
So see, right? Like in my head, that sounds super complicated, but that was Samantha's answer to me when I told her this. So just so y'all know, right? So that's my idea story. J-Dub, do you have one?
No, I need more time to think. So let somebody else go first.
Jab?
I think the buying power argument would be great. I'd love to see something even more broad about Black capitalism, or even just capitalism, or even what is socialism. Like these are things that just come up, like, for instance, in my classes all the time, that I would love to something about this reverse hashtag problem. You know, why we aren't American freedmen, for instance, would be a great, the hell. It's just so absurd to me. And then stuff like that. These are just things that just come up all the time. I'm just thinking of my classes, something that, like right now I'd love like a, you know 3 minutes on why Ryan Coogler is not a revolutionary filmmaker, like that. Like I got one of his biggest fans in my class this semester, so like I but yeah, I could probably just go on and on, why, all kinds of stuff, why Black people should be supporting Palestinian liberation, something on electoral politics, something that is either A, advocating for like a left approach, or B, why supporting the Democrats is not, this two-party system is not an option. Stuff like that. I would love to see stuff like that. Like, anyway, those are just some of what I was thinking off the top.
Geechee, you made a face like, how dare you ask that question? But you got
No,
anything?
no, I got a couple things, but maybe I was hoping that you just stop with the instructions at the end. Just, but no. So I think so after the play, because I think I'm in my playwright bag now. After seeing these two people perform, I'm like, yo, I had this one thing that I want y'all to perform, but and I developed this from following Dr. Amos Wilson, but it's like the 4 responses to white hegemony or white terrorism, and it kind of goes into each layer of like the responses that you have, like a homicidal response, a suicidal response, assimilationist, or a revolutionary or a radical response. That will be one very similar to Jared in terms of something around a revolutionary approach to voting or electoral politics, shall I say, to where people are starting to focus more on policy as opposed to pigment, personality, and all the other things we talked about. Yeah, I think those would be the main ones, because the first one for me, there's a lot in each of those layers. There's so many things that can build off of. Again, the homicide or the suicide or assimilation is because the response and the reactions that we do varies, and it just kind of again push people to develop more confrontational approaches and responses to our conditions as opposed to the other things. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things in my mind, but like, I don't know. I love the Eisenstein movie Strike, right? And I think like what would be cool is like, yeah, it's right there. Yeah, would be, to kind of like watch a film like that and then think, how could I do like a 5-minute animated version of this, right? You know, but other examples, I mean, I think a lot of like Domenico Lacerdo's work, on liberalism and Western Marxism, like if you could distill out like, you know, okay, like let's sit with this book and pull out the key points that he's getting across that become this barrier to the left in the United States of like actually developing revolutionary politics and actually developing international solidarity and all of those things. Like, I think you could take texts like that and work from them, and or even, I mean, a lot of stuff. I mean, there's so much great theory, right, and so many good books that you're just like, okay, people knowing how functionally illiterate, unfortunately, a lot of people are these days. um I mean, obviously I want to encourage people to read, but at the same time, like if there are things that you can take from this, of like these are key lessons of how this works and why even people who are well intentioned fall into these patterns that basically are self-defeating ultimately. I think that's part of where I'm going with thinking about like Lacerdo, is like, I agree with a lot of the things that liberals agree with in their head, but have no way to actualize in their politics, right? And so it's like, how do you get to that place of them, of helping them to understand also that, like, hey, what you're doing is never going to, everything's just going to continue to get worse as long as we keep going down the road that you're going down, right? But yeah, so those are, but I mean, I know that sounds vague, but I think that it's something where it could be done very much with, like, you know, me and somebody else. We read a book together and we bullet it out, and then we say, like, this is what we're going to get across.
Intume?
I mean, so I almost did it last year, and I shouldn't be giving away my ideas in the internet. So if someone steals it, I actually almost did 4 shorts around Black August, around each of the principles, and they were going to be 5 minutes each. Study, fast, train, fight. I'm really into getting a lot of words separated, so like not having a lot of it, actually be very low dialogue level, be mostly visual, and focus it really around political prisoners, and like maybe isolate a particular political prisoner for each one, like Asada for one or something like that, and figure that out. I didn't have the time to really develop it the way I wanted to, so I didn't end up doing it. But it's something on like the thoughts, and I tend to think in series of things, right? I've done a lot of shorts, so I tend to think in like series. So, and then another thought that I actually had was, how could you visually represent dialectical materialism? How could I show visually what negation of the negation is? Because I actually did a thing with my students a few weeks back to kind of show them that principle with their actual bodies, and they actually got it. They couldn't get it when like they read it and I said it, but when I showed them how it worked, right, like via 2, like 3 or people, without like using like the words, they got it. And I think we underestimate. I think we're in such a now like text and image culture that I think we've actually underestimated how some simple images and progression actually can teach people the way that you think you need with the text sometimes. And I know Samantha knows that because she knows about giving them all types of messages via the visuals that they don't even realize they're getting.
Yeah.
So there's a way you could do it in the other, I think, even in the more forefront kind of way. But those are 2 things that I was thinking.
Sam, any thoughts?
Well, first, I just want to say that everything that everybody has said is very doable, because I think a lot of it, like, I know you're calling it animation, but a lot of it could be done in sort of like a motion graphics format. So you just need to decide on the visual style. Like, if I were to do this, especially to appeal to liberal audiences, if I were going for some like nice aesthetics or something, you would just determine your visual style, and then anyway, I think it's very doable, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Because where animation gets expensive is when you're doing things where it's like character performance, frame by frame, that you need like 24 to 30 images per second. Whereas a lot of this information, you could have one image for 2 or 3 seconds. And then if you have motion graphics, like the reason I'm saying the motion graphics thing is that audiences get more engaged with movement. So if you just kind of keep it alive a little bit with like a little bit of, this layering and stuff, that's not very difficult to do. You just need someone that can like do the illustrations or something. So I just wanted to say that. I just feel that these are all very, very realistic projects that I think are possible. And I think I hadn't really planned anything, but I feel like a topic that I would love, that I just don't really always see it really framed. Like, I think just coming from my positioning, I feel like we often talk about all of the dynamics and the problematic dynamics that happen within a settler sphere. And we talk about colonization, but I never hear enough like the reality, like the distinction of really understanding the difference of like operating within the settler sphere and what that means as settlers. We never talk about being settlers. We just talk about the levels, all the different types of oppressions that within the sphere occur. And I'd love to be doing something that kind of draws attention to seeing ourselves a bit more, like bringing that into the context, because I do think it's a significant part of it. And I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's sort of
No, that
probably
makes
something
sense.
that's on my mind.
That makes sense. All right, so we're down to the minutes, and so practicality wise, like I think if we started with picking one, and I'm gonna go back and like kind of make a list of all the things we talked about here. I'm gonna cut out the things that would take time to do. So like Jared's idea about the book, I think is great, but that's gonna take time because somebody would, you'd have to read through it and do the bullets and the whole thing. So I'll probably like, do like a quick cut of things that would take more time. So those are the things that would be on like the long list of things that we could potentially look at doing. And then come back to y'all with like, here are the list of like the ideas that I think feasibly, and Sam, you're gonna have to help me like narrow this down, like that I think feasibly could be done, relatively, not quickly, but like, quicker than it's gonna take months to get done, right? And then see what you all think of like the list so we can get, like, I'd like us to get to one thing. Like, what is the one thing that we could focus on getting done, that we could do well, that we could pull off utilizing ourselves and maybe putting it out to all of our discords? Like, is anybody familiar with this tool, or can do these graphics that would be willing to work with Samantha to do, since she nominated herself? Not that she wasn't already voluntold she was going to do it, but she did. She pointed at herself, and it's recorded, so she can't get out of it now. And so, to help. And then, Geechee's being voluntold that if it's something that needs like narration, like he has to do that. So like these types of things, right? And then in Tume's voluntold, like he has to help on like the cleanup part, to like the direct, make sure it's all pulled together. So, once we get to that place of like, this is the thing that we're going to start with, and then we'd have to talk, like, do we actually need a budget, right? Like, do we need to try and raise funds, or is this something that like between 6 to 10 people, we might, we only need like $1,500. So maybe between 6 to 10 people, we can kind of feel out our own like private networks and see like, can we raise this small amount of money, whatever have you. But I'm, the reason I did this the way I did it today really was because I am the crazy person who gets an idea and really wants to see, is there some way that I can actually make this thing happen? And I started with you all because I felt like you all were the people who could either talk me off the ledge and say like, yo, you're wildin', like this can't, this can't be done. Or you all would be on board with it, and I could say, okay, here's what we're gonna do next, and that's what we're gonna, like, this is the next step. How do we move forward? Is there anything major that I am missing that needs to be contemplated in as part of this like first step of narrowing down and trying to come to a decision of, okay, this is where we're starting? Go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, I'm used to being in class or something, but I would just say that because the concepts are, if I just had to sit down now and try to make something off of what everybody said, like they're not necessarily super clear. So I would just say that for every idea, like if we took your hamster wheel one, it would just need to be clearer that you're like I get the beginning concept, but then what is it that you want to expand? Like, what are the things that you want to show? And so, Jared, what you were saying for your classes, right? If you already know what it is, or M2May, like with the, like if you know what it is that you want to say, or that you've already got the lecture there, then it's easy to sort of just take those ideas and sit and kind of do really rough, scribbly storyboards and visualize all of it. And then you can just get to work. So I would just say, like, if the concept at the beginning, to me, that feels like that's always the hardest part, is just like clarifying like specifically what you want to say, because the production part, once that's clear, is not that difficult.
So if we start with the concept, and then we can get to a place where we all agree, like, this is the concept, and then whoever's concept it is would then be on the task of like me, you, and that person, like, okay, how do we flesh out this concept so that we have like kind of a storyline, an idea of what we want to follow. And then we go back to, okay, now what do we need to do to get this done?
Yeah, then we determine like the level of aesthetics that we want and how much work that would involve or whatever.
Okay, all right. Anybody like, Renee, you crazy? I'm not doing this? Because I don't, look, y'all know I'll send 8,000 emails, so I need to make sure that nobody gonna be cussing me out on the side like, shit, these damn emails. We good? All right.
No, we're good. It sounds great. You're not crazy at all. There's no craziness in this.
Cool. Is there anything that we want to talk about before we close out, outside of saying again, happy early birthday, Geechee, and enjoy your day with your family and people tomorrow?
For sure. No, I think you are crazy, but crazy in a good way. You gonna pull this shit off. That's gonna be crazy.
No, I'm all set on this end, and dinner's waiting, so I'm ready to go. But happy early birthday, and I co-sign. This is good, crazy, and I look forward to the millions of emails.
Yeah, happy early birthday, Geechee. Yeah, whatever you need.
Appreciate it.
All right, I appreciate y'all. Thanks everybody for the time. Samantha, you're my next step, so you'll hear from me shortly.
And happy birthday, also happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right. This is the first time you two have been on together. So there you go. Nice. There we go. Another connection made. Look at that. All right, Jared, it's on you. Take us out. Thanks, everybody.
Peace. Thanks, everybody. As long as you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. We'll see you next time with more Saturday with Renee.